Theater Talk is made possible in part by the CUNY TV Foundation.
Of the ladies that just went in, you're all excused. Thank you very much. You've been cut. Can you please get out?
From New York, this is Theater Talk. I'm Michael Riedel of the New York Post.
And I'm the show's producer, Susan Haskins.
There is a terrific documentary about the theater, its triumphs, its tragedies, its heartaches, its joys. It is called Every Little Step, and it is about the casting of the revival of A Chorus Line that was on Broadway last year. We have with us the stars of that movie tonight, beginning with Bob Avian, who directed the revival of A Chorus Line and who worked with Michael Bennett on the original production. Bob, welcome.
Good to see you.
The beautiful Charlotte D'Amboise, who was in that revival of A Chorus Line.
And nominated for a Tony.
And whose struggle we see to land the part in this wonderful movie.
I know.
And a dear old friend of mine, John Breglio, who produced the revival of A Chorus Line and produced this movie, and was a very close friend and business associate of Michael Bennett's. Welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you.
One of the things that I love so much about this movie is that we have the sort of American Idol syndrome out there now, where you see people get up to audition for something, and they get run down and put down. I spoke to you about this before, John. You were offered the chance to do that kind of thing with A Chorus Line, were you not, to sort of do the casting of it and show everyone being sort of viciously put down? Your response when people came with you with a lot of money for that was?
Well, my immediate response was over my dead body, because my sense was that what the real world is of getting a job on Broadway is just the antithesis of what those shows are. I mean, I have nothing, you know, theoretically against those shows, but those shows are about instant fame, which is part of this culture, and you wake up one day in the shower and say, I want to be a star, and actually one does, or few people become stars out of millions. But what I really wanted to do with this documentary was to sort of isolate what the basic emotion is of being a professional in this theater.
God, I hope I get it. I hope I get it.
And what it is to struggle, and what it is to be a professional actor and sometimes not even eat in the morning because you have to pay your singing or dancing teacher so you'll be ready for an audition. And what the struggle is for years and years, is, you know, is both Bobby and Charlotte know. And that's what I wanted to show, and that's what I tried to persuade Equity about.
There are moments in the movie, though, when you see someone who has flubbed it, not because you knew you brought someone in who's not right for the part, but they flubbed it. You have that reaction, oh, that's not going to go. Did you not want most of those reactions in the movie? Did you not want to make fun of people who just couldn't make the cut?
No, I mean, I didn't know what I was doing. I mean, I didn't know the cameras were rolling, or I did know, but I wasn't paying attention. No, you're always rooting for them, and I don't really care when they flub or they're slow, because that's not what it's about. You know, the final result is their quality and their inner glow, and to be likable and find that person that's specific for the role.
You've been around for a long time auditioning, and yes, in this Chorus Line audition, they were very nurturing, and it was interesting to see how you work, Bob.
Now, today you're going to be nervous. All I can say is use that. That's what the play is about. So when you're standing on the stage and you're dancing and we're checking you out, take that nervousness on board. Use it. Use it as actors. And don't be afraid of it. Let it put you in the right place.
In your past, have you always had such nurturing, kind casting people working with you?
They tend to mostly be that, but the only thing you don't get sometimes is that it's just very dismissive.
Yes.
You know, you come in, you do your thing, and goodbye, that's it. And that happens a lot, but that's okay too. I mean, it's so many people they're seeing, and that's the only thing that you can get, really.
I was struck by how tremendously giving you were being.
Well, you know, I was a dancer, like Byork Lee. We both, and Charlotte, you know, we all started out like that. So I was very sensitive to what that ambiance is like.
It shows, yeah.
Yeah.
It's important to also remember actors, especially these young actors coming in. I mean, Charlotte's a veteran, and Cassie has to
Doesn't
be
look
older.
like it at all.
No, not
I mean,
Beauty veteran.
but what a trooper, because she acted and worked with us as if she was still just starting out. She worked incredibly hard for a year. But these young kids coming in to audition for a chorus line, for them was, oh, you know, how do I get through this? I mean, it was, for them, an intimidating experience. So it always starts from the top, and Bobby always sort of, as he said, nurtured them and made them feel comfortable, because it was a very intimidating experience for them to come in and try to either equal or copy or find their own way from these iconic roles, and that was very tough.
And also, I think by being nurturing, you're going to get the best performances out of people. And when you want to see, that's what you're looking for, you're trying to find, and that's the best way to get it, I think.
Did you have any hesitation, though, about allowing them to follow you around? Because there are some intimate moments, you know, that we don't know when the movie begins that you're going to get the role.
Yeah, it was a little intimidating, you know, and you never know, you know, what, if you're going to crash and burn at the audition, and it's going to be on national, you know.
So how many people did you follow?
It's a very tough process. Nobody ever done this before.
Yeah.
And remember, no one's ever put a camera inside an audition room. This was a first. Actors Equity agreed to this.
That's
with a
right. You
list
were
of
able to
conditions.
negotiate them to
Took
allow
6
that.
months to get the conditions to do this. But what we did was we had every single audition taped, filmed,
Wow.
everyone. So we had over 500 hours of tape, which is an enormous amount. But then as the process went on, since they were intimately involved, the directors could see where we were headed. It was quite see who we were picking out and where Bobby was going. And as they did that, they started isolating it. So by the time we got down to final auditions, they had identified maybe 20 or 30 people. They were pretty sure we're going to wind up. And remember, it's a 95-minute film. You can't do documentaries more than that. So in the end, we also knew we'd probably have to isolate 6 or 7 people. Unfortunately, we had enough from most of the people who were narrowed down to compile what you have. But you never know. You can wind up with the most boring kind of footage, and I worry about that all the time, that we were going to have some, you know, bore. And the other thing that Bobby and I could not do, Actors Equity would not let us look at any of the footage until we cast the show. So because they did not want us to have a cheap way of going back and re-auditioning.
And I have to say, I remember thinking when I auditioned initially, because I auditioned, it was like a 5-month period in between. I remember thinking, they're looking at my tape. I'm not going to
But you were not allowed to look at that tape.
You didn't read the release. We weren't allowed to do it.
How interesting.
You know, I had done a couple of these making of films before for Cameron McIntosh, the making of Martin Gare, the making of Saigon, and so forth. And it was like, you know, 2 different days there'd be set up shots. They would come in and shoot this rehearsal because we wanted that to be seen, or shoot this, and then we would do an interview in a hotel room, and it was all very controlled. And then when John said, we're going to film this, and they're going to be there all the time, I went, yeah, you know. But sure enough, the first day, the microphone went on, the cameras were all around. And the first month, it was very hard to get used to because they were constantly shooting. And it took a long time to get over that and to know that you just had to get on with the job and had to ignore it. And it was amazing that they were there constantly.
Were there any actors who wouldn't let you shoot them?
We had, as I say, close to 3,000. And another condition, never done before, but it was part of the negotiation, was the release. I had to have a complete release. So every actor, before they walked into the audition room, had to sign a release with all the conditions. And what Actors Equity and I decided to do for fairness is that within 48 hours after you were filmed, no matter how many times we filmed you, they had the right to come back to Actors Equity and say, I want to.
Oh, that's great.
You know,
One of the things that's fascinating for someone like me to watch this movie, because reporters aren't allowed in the audition process, you can tell, though, when the winner walks on, and your moment in this movie is when you can do the Cassie bend that you have to do all the way to the floor.
You got to do it. You got to do it.
When you are in an audition and you can do something like that, is your first reaction to look at the faces of the people sitting at that table to see in their eyes if I nailed it, if I got it?
I didn't feel like I nailed that audition when the final, you know. I mean, you know, you don't always know, and sometimes they have been auditions. I did not feel that with this one, but they have been auditioned because I knew I had steep competition, you know, and it wasn't a win-win thing. And but there are times that I do know when I walk in, I'm like, I nailed it. I nailed it, and I know it. But it doesn't always mean you'll get the job. You can walk in there and go, they loved me, but you just never know because you just don't know the circumstances behind it all. And
you can't look in the faces because
you
then
can't
you're
look in
being
the
needy.
faces. Yeah, no. Oh, it's a definite art in the auditioning, and you have to be likable. I think is the main thing, and just comfortable with yourself. I think is important, and it took me a long time to learn how to audition. You know, and I still struggle with it constantly. But it's not. And some people really audition well, but then they don't really, you know, it's like they stay the same. Like there's not a growth. And then there are people that audition terribly that grow unbelievably.
That's a very good point. How do you guys know in the audition room that someone is doing the audition really well, but how do you test them out to think, can they carry the show for 8 performances a week?
Well, you have them back 3 or 4 times if you're really interested, as we did with Charlotte, and you learn something new at each call. At one call, she'll sing better than she did at, say, the first call, or she'll dance. She's more relaxed. You see it. You get to know them. You talk to them. You have a little playback.
You did this over 8 months, right?
Yeah. And so, you know, you layer it, and you get to know the person, and hopefully, you know, are exposed to all the facets of what you're looking for.
One thing that we did in this process, and Bobby and I feel strongly about it, and it's something that's curious in the theater these days. The final auditions for Chorus Line and any other production I'll ever do, we had on a stage. We used the Broadhurst because that was available. Because most productions have their final auditions in an audition room. I wanted the auditions to be on a stage. And the curious thing is that no matter how good an actor may be in an audition room, they come off differently on a stage. They're farther from you, you see their height, you see their body, you see what they project. I mean, there's the old cliche, but some actors don't project beyond the footlights. And in the old days, that's how you did it.
What were you saying, Charlotte?
Well, I was saying that we used to audition, I know that I did, in the earlier days, always at the theater. Always in the theater.
And
it was so funny because when I saw the film, in the very beginning, when you see all those kids lined up, waiting to go into I so remember me being 18 years old and being those kids, going to a non-equity audition. Open call. And always forgetting my shoes. I just always remember, like, God damn it, I forgot the heels.
Saying something.
You know, something. But that panic, but I remember that it's so, it brought back so many memories because it was always at a theater. You always
and we would look at each other, and even at that audition, and there were people we were sure we were going to cast before that, and we looked at each other and said,
You put them on the stage and
it gives you this altar of truth. I don't know what else to say, but it's you have that perspective and you feel like you're in the audience and you can't be fooled and it doesn't lie. And all of a sudden it's very
It's interesting because you would think it'd be the opposite in a way because you're further away.
When you're in a rehearsal room, you have to make contact with the person that's performing for you. And you have to feedback and you have to encourage. And when you're in the theater, you're totally cut off. The lights around them, you're in the dark. And you have true objectivity.
It's through the workshop process. That's why the workshop process that Michael did has been distorted over the years because people use the workshop producers now to raise money. And these people come in, most of whom have never been in a rehearsal room in their lives. They sit in these folding chairs and the actors are as far as you are, and they're judging a show in a workshop without anything. It's like an audition. And they get a completely distorted view of what the show is. They're too close, it's not done. And sometimes they get all excited because they love being that close to the actors. They don't understand suddenly it's on a stage.
And it doesn't work. I can't tell you the number of things I've reported on where people come out, they say, the workshop of this show was great. And then you go to see the first preview in the theater, you're like, what happened?
No, it's exactly the way.
I want to talk a bit about Michael Bennett because he is, in many ways, the star of this movie.
Definitely.
You have the wonderful tapes, the actual tapes of the night that Michael brought all of the dancers, his dancer friends together.
What year was that?
74.
Set the scene for us, John. Where did Michael bring them, and what did he say?
There were 2 dancers, Michelle Peacock and Tony Stevens, who were gathering dancers to have sort of a sharing and it was hippie time and, whatever. And let's get together and share, what we do because we're a unique crowd of people, which is true, and all dancers feel like that. We can do what no one else does, and you sort of pat yourself on the back. So let's get together and dance one night and, tell each other's experiences, or just do gossip. And they mentioned it to Michael, and Michael said, "Can I come?" And Donna and whatever, and they said, "Sure." So he went along with them, but he said, "Can I bring a tape recorder?" And they said, "Yeah, absolutely." So then they first started getting up to start dancing, like 12 o'clock at night, because some of them had shows and all. And they were doing combinations, and, you know, the guys were a little competitive, and someone throwing out this step and that step and whatever. And then they exhausted themselves, and they all sat in a circle, and Michael turned on the tape machine, and he started it off.
I had been talking to Donna a while ago about an idea that I had for a show. And what it is a group like we are, came to New York from various places. We've been in Broadway shows. Like, I want to tape it because what I want to do is really like an interview. It's really about examining a group of people in the society.
And he basically, you know, got it going and opened those doors about his own sexuality, his own secrets. And so that just springboarded everybody around in the circle. And as each story started, it would get more explicit, more involved, deeper and deeper. And
didn't he have like cheap red wine around for them to drink that night?
And perhaps some other things.
And they say what percentage of the show came from that original night of the talk around?
Well, a lot of it. We did a few more sessions, though, which I was there at for like. We'd have about 8 dancers, some things, and 5 dancers at another one. And we did a few more sessions.
Some dancers who spoke to his tape recorder, then as it was developed into the show, and some of them were in the show playing themselves, and some of them didn't play themselves. But some dancers later on complained that they felt that the authorship had been partially theirs, and that Bennett hadn't properly shared it with him. You're a lawyer, John. How would you address that concern?
Well, it was addressed at that moment, because as his lawyer, I told him, if you're going to do this, Michael, you can't have these tapes and you can't have this material without a release, because later on, you can't use the material without their permission. So let's get a release. We got the usual release for $1, because Michael, remember, at this point, Michael has no idea.
Right.
It could be
There's
nothing.
no chorus line.
So everyone signed a complete release for $1. And then Michael, later on, as the thing developed with Bobby and started working with the book writer, said, well, maybe we have a show here. And he kept developing it more and more. We had releases from the workshop. The workshop process started, obviously, revolutionary. Nobody had done this before. They're contributing material, needed releases there, because this is the first time actors are getting up on stage and contributing material, dance, or whatever. So we had all this, and then, you know, the guys look down and we have a chorus line suddenly. It's this huge show. So we had all the releases, we had everything we needed, and as a technical legal matter, Michael owed them nothing and didn't have to pay them anything. The minute the show opened, Michael called me and said, okay, now I have to figure out a way of compensating all those people who were in the tapes, all the people that were in the workshops, and all the people in the original
Which he did not
cast.
have to do legally.
Had no obligation to do it, ever. Because this wasn't, now today, you know, we have all sorts of formulas about this.
Right, but not
so,
that,
so we sat down and Michael constructed, you know, a formula and a participation that would come out of his share, not Nick Dante's or Kleban or Marvin Hamlisch or Jimmy Kirkwood. And remember, they were all authors, but he decided he wasn't going to ask them to contribute. He would give it out of his share personally. And we constructed a deal where they would get a piece of the gross every week, divided among all of them, which still to this day is the most ever given to actors. And a piece of Michael's subsidiaries, basically almost a third of his subsidiary rights, huge amount, if you know what subsidiaries are, motion picture and everything else, never done before. That was a completely voluntary thing on his part, and for the last 30 years, since 1975, more, I have paid out every quarter. And now it's up to, I don't know, a few $1 million or more to all the dancers. The controversy came when I redid the show, because we had no idea, we couldn't project all the way down the road everything, and there was a little gap, which was that if there was a revival on Broadway of first-class production, that wasn't covered. So as a lawyer for the estate, I couldn't just start paying money out. I could be sued by all the beneficiaries. They complained. It was fine with me. I complained. I met with them. New York Times made a big deal about it without even talking to
Putting
me about
the pressure
the
on.
situation.
On opening night.
Right before opening night, I met with them quietly, and I said, I'm going to go back to the heirs. I had to go back to all the beneficiaries. They agreed. They now got paid, and they're getting paid every penny from the first day, and now they're continuing to get paid. But what is important for me to know, for Michael's sake, is that no one before then, and since then, by the way, has ever paid as much money to the actors as we do on Chorus Line.
Did Michael start the workshop
Yes,
thing?
and
The
he
whole
was
concept
the first
of workshops.
everything. And after that, Ballroom, which was the next Michael Bennett
next
show, the guy who was the head of equity at that point, he, Bernie Jacobs, the head of the Schuberts, and I met in Bernie's office, went on all night from about 8 o'clock at night till 3 in the morning, concocted the first workshop agreement, which was modeled on a Chorus Line, because it was right before rehearsals. And that has stayed now as the model that Actors Equity requires when you go into workshop.
But as you said earlier, what has been perverted about the workshop process is it's not really a workshop. It's a shop now to show the wares to raise money. Michael was not going out there raising money for a Chorus Line. He was creating a show in the workshop.
And we had Joe Papp and the umbrella of that organization, and we were getting $100 a week to work there, for a year. Everybody, Marvin Hamlisch, Michael, the cast, and we did, but we had the privacy and this wonderful special place to work.
Yeah. What was Michael Bennett like in auditions? We've seen you on tape at auditions. Was Michael nice, kind of nurturing, or could he be a little intimidating to audition for?
My lips are sealed.
Oh, come on, give us a little.
You're allowed.
Michael was pretty kind at auditions, actually. He was. He was never rude or mean or anything. And he loved to get up and dance and perform. And he would always be up there at auditions, especially in the beginning. And he was more nervous about his own job and getting what he had to get done to be successful. And if we had producers and backers, he was always nervous about that. So that edge always crept into auditions.
Did you ever audition for Michael Bennett?
I did. I auditioned for Scandal, which was
the show he was working on.
And I remember the day you came in and outdanced everybody.
I can't believe you remember that. That's so crazy.
Oh, you were fantastic.
Well, what was it like to face
I
Michael?
can't believe you were there.
What was it like to face Michael Bennett at that table?
It was great. I remember him dancing a lot. I remember him demonstrating the thing, and I remember dancing for him, and it was a great audition. It was a small group. It was for a swing spot, I think. It was already, and I actually did get it, but it had to do point work, and I wasn't able to do it, which I so regret that I wasn't able to do it, because I would have worked with him. For
Was
that
Scandal
sort of
any good? Do you think it would have been good had Michael lived to do it, John? You were around it.
Well, I remember. I just had dinner with Susie Kurtz the other night. We were talking about Scandal because she was supposed to star in it, and she's till this day she thinks if she had a chance to do it, she thought that would have been the role of her career. I mean, she was devastated.
There was a lot of good things.
And she would have been staggeringly good. I mean, it was such a great role. It was, tour de force. And I don't know. Bobby can respond to whether it was going to be any good or not. I think, there was that whole thing, American in Paris, that type
An
thing you're
American Woman
doing.
in Paris.
American Woman
we had
in Paris
5
they were gonna
ballets,
do.
and they were each, 10, 12 minutes long.
Wow, an ambitious show.
Oh, it was.
And it was mostly about dance and not singing.
So did that not happen because he died?
No. It was. I mean, Bobby can tell you what he thinks, but my recollection is that the AIDS crisis really hit.
Yeah.
And the thing that sticks in my mind, Bobby, you can say, Bobby, he said to me, I can't do a show about promiscuity, about sex with a woman running around the world sleeping everywhere with AIDS. It's not something I can do anymore. And it just was beginning. Yeah. And he didn't. His gut was, this is not a show I can do. And it was very, very troubling because everybody was talking about this show.
The next Michael Bennett project.
And everybody wore these
Jerry
T-shirts.
Mitchell
Remember the
was in
T-shirts
that,
that said there's a
There's
scandal on Broadway?
There's going to be a scandal
There's going
on
to be a
Broadway.
scandal. I mean, everybody was.
Well, I mean, there is such a melancholic strain to the documentary because every time you see these wonderful shots, you have footage of Michael Bennett in his prime, and to think what shows could not only have come from Michael Bennett, but from all the people who would have learned by being in a Michael Bennett show, who didn't live to have careers.
The legacy.
I think of it often, believe me.
He'd been dead 22 years. Can you imagine? And he would have only been 65 years old.
Yeah.
Wow.
Or 66, something
Well,
like
that generation, that.
Well, he lives on beautifully in this movie, every little step, which is playing around the country now. I want to thank Bob Avian, who is the star, one of the stars of the movie, and who directed the revival of A Chorus
Thank you,
Line.
Michael.
Charlotte D'Amboise, who got the part, and John Breglio, the producer, who put it all together.
Yes, and what have we learned from this episode? Sign, get a release.
That's right.